Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Transformation Time. Every Thursday, I host an episode of either Transformation Time or Ray Behind the Scenes. My name is Diana Lizarazo, and today's guest speaker is Jon Khan. Now, before we get started, I want to share some amazing news with you. I want to talk about my real estate social networking platform. It is a platform for real estate investors, mentors, and professionals to be able to start building credibility and trust and to become visible in our networks. So to help to become more searchable. So if that's something you're interested in, go check it out. It's on realestateinvestorfam.com. You're going to love it. It's so much fun. You get to engage with other investors. You get to actually show who you really are on there. Check it out. Now back to the show. On Transformation Time, our guest speakers are real estate investors, and they're here to help you by sharing their personal development journeys and the mindset shifts they've gone through to get to where they are now. So like I said, we'll get to chat about what are the changes they've made to get to where they are now. What are they doing now to get to their future goals? So we'll get to learn about the problems they've gone through, the mindset shifts they've gone through. So if you guys are ready to hear what Jon has to say, let's send him some thumbs up, let's send him some hearts, and let's get him on. Okay.
Hello.
Hey Jon, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, good, good. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me on. So blessed to be here.
Awesome. So let's start with just giving the viewers a little bit about yourself. What has been your real estate journey like? What's your portfolio like? Anything you'd like to share?
Okay. Well, actually, I'll start off with as to how I got into the real estate space. So, for the last 23 years, I spent in the corporate world doing various leadership roles, and then in 2016, I actually had a bad concussion accident, which completely kind of changed the trajectory of my life and how things came about, and just what brought me to here today. So I suffered a concussion. I had a lot of symptoms that I was dealing with. I went through various different types of treatments and therapies, and the reality of all those symptoms was really starting to kind of settle in terms of all the limitations that it was creating. So it created a very difficult and challenging time, because it was just completely limiting in terms of what I was able to do, both in, from a work perspective and in a social setting perspective, and just being able to go out and enjoy. But luckily enough, I was able to find therapy that kind of changed and allowed me to work through everything. And it was right at that time that we had gotten into real estate. So we actually had attended an education session, and we kind of jumped in with 2 feet into the multifamily space. And our first project was actually, we had purchased a 6 unit, and it was just in the process of the tenants that were leaving. So it created this perfect opportunity to kind of do the first BRRRR project, and be able to kind of fully gut the building, renovate it, and luckily was in an area that it was actually going through a lot of gentrification. So it kind of supported that whole strategy that was there. And this was right at the time of COVID. And then when COVID started to settle in, then everything associated to the project really started to change. where the cost for renovation started to go up. The ability to get people to be able to do things was starting to change. So we really had to take a step back and kind of pivot and say, okay, how do we modify strategy here and kind of figure out what we're going to do, because this is not going to work out with how we had planned. And right at that time, it was also the ruling change that CMHC had done, where it wasn't allowing you to pull out equity. So we were the financial partners, and we had a working partner at that time. So the motivation kind of started to change a little bit. So luckily, we were able to exit out of the project, and we were able to successfully kind of move forward with it without causing any issues. And then at that point, that's where we really kind of started to get in, and we partnered with another very good friend of ours, and we started to actively build our portfolios. And we purchased a 12 unit, then a 24 unit, and we kind of went through the process of repositioning the asset, right? And going through and doing renovations on it and driving up the value associated. Because at the end of the day, right, we want to be able to create something that, you know, any of the people which are living there could really kind of call it their home. So so we actively performed that. And then just last year, we ended up expanding our portfolio into the US, into the short-term rental market. So we're super excited to do that. So just in the beginning of this year, our properties went onto the platform, onto various different platforms for Airbnb. So we're really excited to kind of see how that goes, and we're very happy for it. So yes, so which then brought me into the space of mortgage broker. I ended up enjoying this the real estate space so much that I thought, you know what, one of the best ways to kind of be able to give back to the community is that, you know, leveraging my knowledge and experience that I've kind of learned working through multifamily and figuring out, you know, what needs to be done. I thought it would be a great opportunity to kind of share some of that knowledge and that passion, and you know, take it back to working with my clients and customers to help them out from a financing perspective. So
That's amazing. That's
so yes.
amazing. And so you still have your corporate job, or are you now full-time real estate investor and
No,
mortgage broker?
so I kind of wrapped all of that up as I wrapped up on my therapy, and I wrapped up with everything, kind of getting back to life and on a new path. So I wrapped all of that up actually at the beginning of the year this year. So I was very happy to do that. A pivotal moment in my life. So
Yeah,
which was good.
scary and fun at the same time,
Yeah.
right?
Well, you know, it was interesting kind of going through all of that experience. You know, you really have to keep a very strong mindset. So obviously when going through the concussion, you know, it was forcing me into a corner as to, you know, wow, is this how things are going to be for the rest of my life, right? And it was something that, you know, personally it was difficult for me to accept some of those limitations that were starting to settle in. So, you know, keeping
What kind of limitations were you starting to see that started making you realize that you didn't like want that?
So, so ultimately, I would not be able to sit in a room or have conversations of any type, because when there's too much stimulation, either through light, through noise, through conversation, it was just consuming all the energy that was there. So I only had spurts of energy for a very short time. Following that, my symptoms would kick in, where it was just an excessive amount of tiredness and lack of focus and headaches, and literally I had to stop and basically sleep, because that was my body telling me, that's it, we've reached the limit, and you know, we can't
We're done for the
that's
day,
it,
ready to take a
we're
break.
done, we're done for the day. So, and I've always been a very social person. I love interacting with people, I love communicating with people. So for me not to be able to do that was just something very difficult to accept. And then obviously from, doing my corporate job as well, it was a demanding environment. I mean, I love that environment, right? It was a good 60, 70 hours a week of work, but it's just something that I enjoyed being in it so much. And just following that, it just, my body was not able to handle that anymore. So that's where, focus had shifted, and, with a
Already
keeping a
changed.
very strong mindset, it was, I was determined to kind of get through it, right, and kind of go on to my next phase in life. I never imagined that I would be going through something like this in my life, where I would have to do a career change. Sometimes when you start with these corporate jobs, you're like, yeah, that's it. This is where I'm gonna be. This is where my career is gonna go, and this is how I'm gonna retire. So now it's completely
Especially when, like you said, you enjoyed it. So it's very strange when you love what you do, you enjoy what you do, but then something like a concussion that's so pivotal and changing to your life can really just make you still reevaluate, even though you do love it so much, but then it's like you're having to adapt to those types of now new changes. So I'm curious with adapting, what kind of things from your corporate job were you able to bring over, or even things that maybe you never could have in your corporate job, but now you could express more in the real estate world? Any things like that that you
so
see changes in?
Yeah, so one of the skill sets. So in my corporate role, I was in a client facing role. So basically, that means that I always spent time at a client site. So it's a little bit of a different interaction and environment when you're not in your own company's office, but you're actually at a client site, because it was a client executive role. So uh, having that skill set and that knowledge of how to connect and communicate with people was very, very important, right? That's something that, I'm
It's so pivotal in the real estate investing world. So it's just nice that, like you had no experience in real estate, but you have something that's a crucial skill that really helps in anything, not even real estate, but just like getting into any industry as an entrepreneur, as a real estate investor is so pivotal.
Absolutely, right? I mean, relationships are so key, right? And especially, that's always been an important element, right? And you're right, given in kind of any industry or any environment. But when you're an entrepreneur and you're kind of doing your own thing, and you're building your own business, and you're building your own brand and your own awareness, right? It really heightens it to a new level, right? As to how important communication and soft skills are, right? So, and then the other element that also kind of carried forward was that, and this is something that I always provided, even as mentoring when I was in my corporate role, was that you have to be passionate about what you do. You have to love it, right? And if you're going to be successful at it, right, that's what's going to give you that ability to give that 120% to it, right? Like, it's just, you're going to go full at it. And that's one of the things that I learned that allowed me to be successful in that environment, right? Just like with any company environment, you always go through a lot of cuts and whatnot. So surviving that for 23 years was certainly an interesting skill set to kind of learn. But being passionate about something was so important. And that's something that I practiced to this day, right? I
Mhm.
as we got into real estate, I fell in love with it. I just
Yeah.
absolutely loved it, right? So you try to do everything there is possibly can to learn more, right? This is where you either talk and connect with people and kind of learn from their experiences, right? And understand what are some of the challenges that they were having, so that you're always consistently learning, right? So that's the one element that I really, really enjoyed.
Yeah, and that's a great point, actually, that you said. I don't think we've ever spoken about that in any of my shows. So I love that you brought that up because it is so important. And I think a lot of people also don't realize or think that, for example, you get into real estate and it has to be your full-time job. Again, a lot of us that are doing it full-time, it's actually because we enjoy it, we love it, and we love being entrepreneurs in that area. But there are a lot of people that will get into real estate to be able to set them up to be able to do the other things that they love to do.
Correct.
So it's also like I love that you brought that up because I wanted to also share that because a lot of people sometimes think like, oh, but not really interested in real estate. But you don't, I mean, there is a certain level of interest you have to have. But in the sense, like, you don't have to think of it as your full-time job, but it's your gateway to doing that thing that you do love that you can't get
So
to.
and so you're absolutely right, right? So one of the other elements associated with that is that when you really love something, what you do, then in the back of your mind, it's not like it's not work where you've got pressures as to and the stress associated with, oh my God, I have to do this, I have to get out of bed and go do this every day, right? When you love something so much, it just your mindset is just set for success right from the beginning of the day, right? Because once you get up, right, one part of my routine now that I get up is that it's the positive affirmations, right, as to yes, today is going to be a very successful, productive day, right? And it's setting that mindset and then getting your to-do list, and you're just I realized as to some days obviously are challenging, but when I started doing this whole the mindset focus, it allowed me to work through my list so effectively. I was like, wow, look at that. You know what? It makes a huge difference in terms of mindset and focus and what it can do and how much it drives you, right? Because you just want to keep on going.
I love that. And so, talking about mindset, when did that come up? Was that something you've always had in you, or is it like after the concussion, like you just started realizing, like how did mindset come up to you, and even just thinking about it? Because a lot of people don't really think about that, don't really think about, what your thoughts should be like, or what you should be putting in your mind. So I'm curious that you're talking about it. What made you even get into thinking about mindset and understanding the importance of
So
it?
yeah, so I mean, when I did my corporate job, I don't think I ever kind of went through that mindset exercise, right? Because it's, the as much as some of the corporate world, things are very prescribed in a particular sense that yes, you've got a very specific mandate, these are the things that you need to achieve, and then you kind of just you work through that, right? I think the mindset piece really came in when the concussion happened, right? And especially when I was working through the symptoms, because like I mentioned, it was a really challenging time for me at that point, right? It's not something that I've ever really talked about openly before, so yeah, that was a very difficult time. So
And what about it was like what made it so difficult, or what were your challenges during that
I
process?
I think I was having a really difficult time just kind of accepting some of the limitations that were there. You mean to me that
None of
was
us like change, especially when it's
it's
forced upon us.
so change I've always been good with. So, that's one element that I've always been very accepting of, is that yes, things change and you need to be able to adapt to that, right? That was part of my kind of success that happened in the corporate world as well, that I learned very early in my career, that if you want to be successful, you have to be adaptable. You have to be coachable and you have to
100%.
be adaptable, right? Because if you don't do that, then your mind won't be open to anything, right? Of learning anything new,
Completely.
right? So, and then the element in terms of when I was going through the concussion and having those limitations and not being able to do the things that I loved, and kind of accepting that and saying, okay, so this is what your new life is going to be like. I had a very challenging time with that, and
Mhm.
that's where I really had to focus on my mindset as to keeping it very strong and very focused as to, no, I need to get through this. I need to be able to drive through this. I need to find the light at the end of the tunnel, because I'm not willing to accept these limitations which are there. So I was very driven to kind of get through that, which also made healing a little bit more challenging, because sometimes when you have a brain injury, if you're pushing yourself too hard to get through something, it doesn't help. So you also have to take a step back. So I actually needed,
Sometimes patience is also important, which sometimes we don't like. We just want things
yeah,
done today. We
yeah.
want it done yesterday,
Oh,
right?
oh my God. I was treating, it was kind of funny because I was treating my treatment plan like a project plan. I was like, okay, so these are all the milestones we need to hit. Why are we not hitting these? What's happening? Why are we not doing this? And it's like, well, no, it's me. It's how, your body's reacting to the treatment that you're getting. So it was definitely interesting to kind of go through that whole experience. But yeah, keeping
I
that.
think even adapting it to the real estate world, because there's lots of similarities in that and getting into real estate and starting something new, right? Because it's like that, like you start something and you don't know anything about it. It's super scary, it's
Oh,
stressful.
yeah.
You're dealing with so many different problems and you're trying to get through it, and so it's like anything that you do in life, I feel like all these little experiences help you with like that, like because you have to do with adapt and change in getting into real estate, especially if you do it full time too, right? It's like you're getting into this new world. You're having to now deal with what are the new changes, having to deal with yourself accepting these new changes and trying to make it as easy as possible for yourself. And like you said, right? Like, and we're always very impatient and just want everything to happen yesterday, right? And it's like you start learning a lot about yourself. Like you learned a lot about yourself going through a concussion. I'm sure even going into full time in real estate, but same thing, even going from a job to going into full time in real estate or doing something that you actually are passionate and want to learn about, it's always kind of chaotic and stressful, but it's like that acceptance, like you said, when in your case, not accepting that this is your life and that you're going to fix it and change it is like the same thing being going and becoming an entrepreneur or becoming a real estate investor, just doing what you want, not accepting that the life that you have right now is what it is, and accepting that you're going to do the things that you love and want to do.
Absolutely. So yeah, you're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head, right? It was so important to be able to have that mindset to be able to go do that, right? And especially when you're in real estate. So one of the other elements is that uh, you always have to be flexible with your strategies in real estate, right? Not so you just can't pick something and say, yeah, that's my strategy. That's it. That's all I'm going to do, and that's what I'm going to go execute, right? One of the things that we've learned is that you have to be able to have the ability to pivot, right? You need to be able to consistently take a step back, reevaluate, and especially in a time like this, right? Like you look at the amount of uncertainty that's there, right? And as to what is going to happen, where things are going to go, right? How do you work through this? This is where having the ability to take a step back, have the ability to kind of pivot and re-strategize, it's so important. And sometimes, you have to accept certain conditions, right? And you need to be able to turn around and say, yep, this is something new. This is something that, this is the time frame potentially it's going to be, and this is how you work through it, right? So, going through that experience kind of personally really kind of sets your mind as to, okay, how do you work through challenging times as an entrepreneur, right? So definitely very grateful to kind of gone through that. Not grateful for the fact of that happening, but it's obviously there's always a learning experience associated to everything, right? I've always been a firm believer that everything happens for a reason, right? And it's
100%.
and you have to always keep on thinking about and looking at, yes, there's light at the end of the tunnel, yes, it's going to be successful, yes, I might need to modify and change and adapt, and that's what you need to be able to really do, right? And it's so pivotal and so important to do that when you're especially dealing with real estate, because there are scary times, right? It's when you're looking at buying in properties, especially expensive properties, multifamily properties, right? That's where it starts to get a little bit scary, right? And there's always that moment as to, oh my God, should I do this or not do this, right?
Mhm.
So
Or while you're in it, right? Should
yeah.
I get out of this or should I stay in it, right? Mindset becomes very, very important in so many ways. Since you've gone through concussions and then like now even going, I feel like going full time into real estate investing, that in itself is a huge thing. What kind of tips do you have for the viewers for mindset to help kind of keep you going, or even talking about the differences between the two situations? Like, what tips do you have for the viewers?
So, mindset is an interesting thing, right? And I think for me personally, right, one of the ways I keep a very, very strong and positive mindset is that I always try to connect and communicate with people, right? And then this is where, kind of just getting out and meeting people either through online platforms or through in-person events, right? And it's really hearing everybody's journey, right, as to and kind of hear what some of the challenges that they are going through, currently going through, or what they've gone through and how they work through them, right? Because to me, I've always found that by listening to people and kind of what they've gone through, right, you always learn from it, right? And that kind of either reinforces the mindset that you have, or it's going to turn around and get you to take a step back and say, maybe I need to go reevaluate something, right? That's and it could be just something that somebody mentions in part of their experience or their knowledge, right? So I think, kind of hearing people's experience and challenges, I think it's an important element from a mindset change, right? And then I think just being consistently aware kind of what's going on, right? Even within the market. I think that's, especially, when you're looking at real estate, I think it's important to kind of look at all the moving pieces in the environment, right? And I guess that can apply to any industry, right? You really want to be aware of your surroundings, which are there, right? I think it's so important because it's those little bits and pieces of information, right, that you're going to pick up on and kind of, it will keep you on track, right, from a mindset perspective. So to me, I think those are an important element. So
I love that. And even the tip you gave before, which I feel like I'm hearing it as you speak, I mean, about others, but is like that passion and that love for what you do. Because like you said, I think like in the concussion, you love to be around people, and that was kind of limiting you.
yeah,
And that thing of like the love to be around people and just to be able to be social was probably like a non-negotiable. Like, this is not going to be a part of my life that I can't be around people. And that's probably one of the biggest reasons why you love to be in real estate, because that's so pivotal of being a real estate investor is being around people and you working in the areas that you love to do, right? Like, you love to be around people. I'm sure the roles you take are probably a lot of like trying to meet people and, learning what their goals and everything are to be able to bring them into projects that you're
right.
on or
So
learning from them like you were talking about.
So one of the other elements, right, and this is kind of I picked up on, during my previous career, was that being able to kind of help people through problems and solutions, right? So I work for a large IT company, so my role, as a client executive, was being on site, and then obviously, as things kind of came up, right, from a strategy perspective, you work through, right, but it was always with the focus as to what value add can I drive to my client, right? That was the most important element, right? I never worked with, oh, well, this is what our contract said that we signed and this is all I can do, right? I always looked at ways of how do I go above and beyond, right? And that to me was a very, very important element because it's the same element that I now carry forward in my mortgage business, right? As to, I will treat every single client like if they're my only client, right? And whatever time it takes and whatever it requires, right? It's that dedication to it, right? And how do I drive value add to them? Or, maybe they're going through a situation and how do I solve that problem for them, right? And that's the other element that, it really ends up exciting you, right? To me personally, excites me, right?
Yeah.
Is this being
Oh my God, you're talking my language. I'm all about creating solutions. I'm like, you guys want to give me a problem? I'm here. Let me figure out how I can solve it. It's so much fun, right?
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. So that's
I'm
one element.
curious, actually, oh, sorry, you wanted to say one more thing?
No, I was going to say that's one of the elements that I've also really enjoyed, and once again, that I've really carried forward with, with the business that I do now. So
Mm-hmm. And I was going to say, like that, being in the corporate world, especially you said how much? 23 years, 25
20,
years?
23 years.
23 years. So I don't know, did you ever have that thought to become like basically self-employed, to have your own business? Because that I feel in itself is a huge mindset shift. So I'm curious on how did you get comfortable with those feelings? Or even was it always there and you just never took the plunge to think about it in more detail? Like, how did that come for you? Because I know for some people that's very hard.
So, that's an interesting question because I come from a family background where we've always done a business on our own, right? So,
Mhm.
I've watched my dad, run his multiple different businesses, and then eventually he actually was a mortgage broker as well. So, oddly enough, I ended up towards that area. But when I was going through my career and kind of progressing and moving forward, right? To be honest, I never thought about, kind of being an entrepreneur and going out on my own. I honestly thought that the company that I was working for is who I was going to retire with. I was so set to reach a particular level that, what, I was driven towards that, right? I kind of had my plan. Okay, yeah, this is what I need to do. These are the different roles I need to be able to do. So I was very set in doing that. And I said, yeah, when I get to that, this is how many years I want to spend doing that. And then maybe at that point, in my last kind of 5 to 10 years of before retirement, I might take a look at, will I go out on my own or ever do consulting or anything like that? But, it was a little bit in the back of my mind, but it was still so driven in terms of just being dedicated to
Like
the
leveling up
goal.
in your business,
Right,
in the business you were working for, I
right.
mean.
So when being in this position where now I'm kind of building my business, right? It definitely required a change in mindset, no doubt about that, right? Because not having something kind of just laid out in front of you, right? Knowing that, okay, yeah, if you do this, this, and this, and this is where you're going to end up, right? It's you now have to kind of create that whole plan. You need to figure out as to, okay, what are some of the milestone things that I need to do? Where do I want to get to within the 5 year, 10 year mark, right? So I kind of had to redo some of that and reestablish some of that. And obviously I had to kind of change my mindset associated to that as well, right? To say, okay, now we need to go do this.
And so what did you, so was there anything in particular that you did to make yourself feel more comfortable going into this full time as a mortgage broker or as an entrepreneur?
um
Or you just took the dive and
I
you're just like,
don't
jump off
know.
the cliff, let's see what happens.
You know what? Just like how we kind of took the jump into the deep end for real estate, right? And going into bigger properties. It was that same mindset as to, what, the only way to find out if this is going to be successful is that you got to jump in, and you got to jump in with your full dedication and commitment to it, right? And I think you need to be able to do that. Otherwise, there'll always be a part that's just going to hold you back, right? And then it's going to start setting limitations, right?
Mhm.
So yes, it's always scary to take that first step, but if you evaluate everything correctly, and you obviously have to work with certain assumptions being in place, right? You kind of work, set those, then you need to jump in and go do it.
Yeah. And I feel like, to be honest, the easiest ways to do those is when you're kind of put in a place where you have to do it.
Yes.
Like either mentally you're just like, I'm done, this is not happening, or like that, like a job, like you lose your job, like something sometimes usually they push you where you're just like, well, like let's see what happens if I do this. And usually those are the best and easiest times when something just like pushes you, because usually when you're comfortable in your job or you're comfortable in where you are, you kind of get a little, not lazy, but I think like, well, I'm so good in this, to start doing this,
you
kind
get
of
into
like,
your
oh,
you get into your comfort zone, right?
yeah.
So that's the thing. So um and interesting enough, that's also another element that I picked up from my corporate job as well, was that I ended up putting myself into positions that, I didn't feel the most comfortable with in the beginning, right? And I had to kind of push myself out of my comfort zone, right, to be able to kind of propel and move forward, right? So it's that same kind of mentality and mindset that I do now. You just need to push yourself and put yourself in a situation that, yeah, it's not the most comfortable, absolutely, right? But if you focus on it and you have that strong mindset and behind it, and that positive mindset that yes, you're going to be successful with it, and yes, things happen for a reason. Sometimes the worst of things happen, but they're all there. Everything happens has a very specific purpose, right? It's either teaching you a lesson, or it's something that you need to be aware of before, or something that you had to experience before you take the next step, right?
Mhm.
So
I
I
love
can
that.
I that's how I consistently kind of focus and work through things. Otherwise, when you get challenging moments, you're gonna, it's very easy then to kind of shut down, right?
Mhm.
And kind of be like, oh, okay, yeah, you know what, I'm done. It'd be going
Exactly.
back to my old concussion days. That's okay, yeah, you know what, I'm done. So yeah.
100%. Completely agree. And I think even though, for example, like yourself, we were saying you never really thought about becoming an entrepreneur while you're in the corporate world. But I think one of the, or a couple, in my opinion, couple of the things that I guess define someone as being an entrepreneur is, for example, one of them I say is like that, like solution-oriented people where you just always want to be like, how can I fix this? How can I improve this? Which is something that I feel like I also have. But in that sense where, because I don't remember, there was a word, I remember I was watching some kind of show and it's talking about entrepreneurs, and they were talking about how there are entrepreneurs in the workforce and they just kind of create their jobs for them, and so I was just thinking, like, even though sometimes a lot of people don't even think about what it is, what the meaning of it is, but you are one, and like that you were saying, like I feel like one of the things is you're always wanting to create solutions in what you do, because I mean that's what an entrepreneur is. You start a business is for the fact of like some kind of problem came up and you just have that passion to help fix it and solve it in some kind of way.
So that's a very interesting point because, to be successful, because you can apply the same kind of analogy and mindset applies when you're, in the corporate world as well, right? Because if you're a problem solver, right, or you're looking to drive value add, right, then you end up creating opportunities for yourself as well, right, which allows you to be successful, right, because you learn from those opportunities. You provide a solution to something that you were kind of working through. So these are important elements that, yes, it can almost apply to any industry that you're kind of working through, right? So
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. Now let's do a flip over to, and I think actually this is probably even a good time because you said you just started this year full time, you said, right?
Mhm.
So right now you're in a phase of figuring out what your next 5, 10 year, those big goals are, and just figuring out even who is this person who is building their own business, because that's a very different person than an employee, right? So what are the changes you're making right now to get to those big 5, 10 year type of goals? And feel free to share your goal with us.
So, I mean, our my kind of next five year goal or 10-year goal is to slowly and steadily kind of build our real estate portfolio. At the end of the day, uh, I never I never count the number of doors that we do, right? Because you probably see that now a lot in social media, right? Where that's a big element that people focus on, right?
People
Is to
do focus on that a lot, yeah.
Right. So, one of the things that we kind of learned was that it's so important to focus on the quality of the asset, right? That you're buying, right? So I think now over the next little while, it's going to create some pretty interesting opportunities within the entire industry, right? From a real estate investment perspective, right? I think and just very carefully evaluating things and picking kind of the right assets to add to your portfolio to kind of have that growth. I think that's going to be the goal for the next while, right? From my own business itself, it's really focusing on just connecting with people out there, right, and communicating with them and figuring out ways of, how can I be, how can I provide a solution to them? How can I drive value add to them, right? Or even if it's just, kind of having a conversation and understanding what's going on, right? I mean, that's been a big part of my time that's been right now over the past little while. A lot of people have questions as to, what's going to happen, where do you think things are going to go, how are things are going to kind of turn out. So even just having those conversations, right, you're kind of bringing value add to your clients and customers out there, right? Because it's really kind of sharing, my insight and knowledge and, kind of everything that I pick up on that's happening within the industry, and then, helping them understand, okay, this is where potentially where things are gonna go. Nothing's 100% exact, right? I always tell everybody my crystal ball seems to be working well today, so I'm gonna share with you in terms of what I know, because things are rapidly changing as well, right? So
100%.
uh, so yeah, so really on kind of those two fronts, personally, it's just it's connecting and growing and meeting people, and then from a real estate perspective, it's really evaluating everything very very carefully, and taking a look at kind of purchasing the next right asset, right? That will be the focus over the next little while.
Love that. And I think it's also just nice that combination that you have as a real estate investor and a mortgage broker, because which is kind of like also what I love as a private lender, is that you get to analyze other people's deals and see how they run the numbers, which I feel like right now is so pivotal. I feel like the more properties you can analyze the numbers, the easier it makes it for you as you yourself investor understanding what's happening, especially that you get like a nice wider view of people investing in different places and seeing how they run their numbers, even probably taking a few tips from them. You see how they do something like, oh, I should keep that in the back pocket.
So that's a very, very good point that you brought up, because I've seen two sides of it, right? Sometimes I've seen sides where, people haven't done enough analysis, right? And when they're looking at things, so that's the other element that, I always kind of leverage back on my experience. Obviously, we looked at a bunch of different deals, right? That some of them made sense, some of them didn't make sense, and some of them didn't go through, right? We put in offers on it, and it didn't go through, right?
Mm,
So it's, now when people are evaluating deals, right, you need to be kind of, you really need to do your due diligence, right? You really
yeah.
need to understand very carefully all the different elements that impact your deal, right? Because, as you've seen over the years, our environment has kind of changed, right? And it's put people into positions that, maybe they didn't evaluate correctly, right? So yeah, so that's one important element of really analyzing correctly, right? And looking at all the different parameters associated with that. And then, yes, there have been deals where, where I've seen additional things being analyzed. I'm like, oh, great. You know what? This is something to kind of add on to my toolkit, and something that I will, take a look at or leverage when I'm, looking at the next deal.
Mhm.
So yes, but really kind of carefully looking at all elements associated to it, right, is very, very important now.
Mhm. And any new type of skill that you're wanting to learn now, like that you're going full time into this and you're starting a business, is there any new skill that you feel like you have to learn or you're wanting to learn to get to your big goals?
So, it's kind of funny. I've never been big on doing kind of the social media piece, right? And kind of being out there. So that element is very, very new to me, right? I'm comfortable being in front of people, but it's, social media has now kind of become, part of our social fabric is what I'm going to say, right? It's become one of those elements or things that exist that it's more than just a tool. It's how things kind of function and happen. So I'm learning a tremendous amount about that right now and kind of how to leverage that and work through that. So definitely an interesting and fun time because it's, fun learning kind of new skill set, new, even doing stuff like this. I've never done, anything like this before, right? And never imagined that I would be doing something like this before. So to me, that's all new. And I really love it. I really enjoyed the learning element associated to it.
That's
So.
amazing. I just wanted to give a shout out because Jay was saying that he loved the great insights that you gave on mindset. So I just wanted to give him a shout out and just say hi to Ishan. Ishan,
Uh,
hey. But yeah, that's amazing. Any final words you would like to share with the audience?
um, I think, as everybody's aware, right, we're kind of going through some very interesting and challenging times, right? And you got to kind of keep your head up and just keep going through it and working through it, right? And, you just, as a real estate investor, right, you need to consistently go back and take a look at, okay, what is it that I can optimize? What is it that I can reduce? Where can I drive more value add, right? What is the combination of things? So, in times like this is where you need to start to get a little bit creative, right? And then, the other piece associated is that you also need to have a little bit of patience to work through everything, right? Because obviously things are not changing fast enough, right? In the direction that we want them to change, but it will eventually happen, right? So sometimes it requires a little bit of patience, a little bit of repivoting, a little bit of re-strategizing, and a combination of all those, right? So it's so important to kind of look at all of those elements and just figure out what works best for you, right? And that's the one thing, right? What might work for one person right now doesn't necessarily mean it will work for another person, right? So you really have to
100%.
carefully evaluate. And this is where, meeting and talking with people, the professionals within the industry, or even just other entrepreneurs, right? This is where I think the biggest learning will happen over the next little while, right? So I encourage people to go out and try to connect and talk to as many people as possible, right? Because I think it's such an important element and thing to do, especially at this given time.
I completely agree with you. I love that last piece of advice that you gave, especially that one, because I completely agree with you. Right now, in the environment we're in, as things are also just changing, even for in the same place for different people. So it's just like knowing what's going on with everyone, I think is so important to just be able to talk about it, understand what's going on, because it's exactly what you're saying. It's just right now is the time to be aware of what's going on and just hear about what problems other people are having or sharing yours because that also helps. Someone may have like some type of solution for you that you just never thought of. So I completely agree. I love that. Yeah,
Excellent.
another
Perfect.
thing from Jay. He's loving all your insights right now. You're just throwing out some amazing bombs right now.
Oh,
Truth bombs.
well, I'm very happy to, whoever can find value add from this, I'm very happy to consistently share. So
Awesome.
yeah.
And thanks so much, John, for coming on. If you guys love what you heard from John, follow him. He will be tagged on here so you can follow him and see what he's up to these days. And if you love my shows, definitely send me a follow. Send us a comment. Let us know what you loved, anything you'd like to share with us. And yeah, thank you, John, for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It was tremendously a lot of fun and greatly appreciated the opportunity. Thank you.
Awesome. Hope we will see you in the next
Yeah.
episode. Bye, everyone.
Take care. Thank you.